Scientifically speaking, we're sharing the view. From labs to clinics, breakthrough shining through, with minds that inspire and stories to unfold. Scientifically speaking, the future's being told.
Welcome to another episode of Scientifically Speaking with Christine on Oz Arab Media. Today, we're diving into a topic that's both deeply personal and broadly scientific. It's about autism and neurodiversity. Autism affects millions of people worldwide, yet many of us still struggle to understand its variations, especially from the inside perspective. Our guest today is William Stillman, an award-winning author and autism advocate who has written extensively about the autistic experience, including his groundbreaking book, Autism and the God Connection, and several other influential works that explore how autistic people think, interact, and connect with the world. William has lived with Asperger's syndrome himself and has dedicated decades to helping parents, caregivers, educators, and professionals understand autism from a deeply human and scientific point of view. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction, too. You covered it beautifully. Thank you. Thank you, Christine.
No worries at all, William. Let us start straight away into the topic that we're meant to be here today. William, you've been described as the autism whisperer. So from a scientific perspective, how do you define autism and neurodiversity in a way that bridges both lived experience and current research?
In my opinion and in my experience, autism is it sounds very complicated, but it's really simplistic in that it is a neurological blip, misfire that creates motor control issues and interruptions in how the brain is communicating with the body. So I always tell people, let's try to rethink or re-envision the autistic experience in the way that you would approach supporting someone who has been neurologically compromised by stroke or Parkinson's or Hodgkin's or ALS or any other neurological issue that does create those motor control blips and misfires and disconnects. And so in doing so, it is so extremely important that you then disregard the physical issues that might appear to be disordered in favor of presuming the intelligence and the intellectual competency of the individual within. Right. So you disregard the facade in someone who may not be able to speak or may have vocalizations that are unintelligible, someone who maybe has issues with ambulating, issues with perseverative actions and activities. You disregard all of that in favor of talking to and with someone at their chronological age instead of about and around them, as if we believed they were void, vacant, and unaware. And that has, Christine, that's always been my approach for going on 40 years now. And I cannot surrender it. I will always stand by that. Presume intellect, always.
That is amazing, and it's a lovely way of explaining it. We thank you for this definition. Now, in your earliest books were focused on explaining the autistic mind to parents, educators, and caregivers. What made you decide to write from the inside out rather than simply summarizing clinical descriptions?
Well, I'm not a clinician. And so I've been, as I said, I've been working in the field for going on 4 decades now. And in that work, I did a lot of interaction with family members and caregivers of people on the autism spectrum who were very confused or overwhelmed and intimidated by all of the clinical jargon. And what I wanted to do through my earliest books was to really distill the essence of what is most valuable as guiding principles in supporting their loved ones, and set aside all of the clinical information. I
Right.
always tell people, use the diagnosis to get you what you want and need in terms of support,
Mm.
and then set it aside and let's focus on the uniqueness and the beauty and the giftedness of the individual, him or herself.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And as a person diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, how has your personal experience complemented or challenged the scientific frameworks about autism?
Yes, that's a great question. I think that it has given me an advantage
Right.
in that I am able to perhaps serve as an intercessor, an intermediary, or
Yes.
an interpreter on behalf of some folks who, on the surface, appear to be, pretty
Mm.
severely impacted. And for about 35 years now, I've been using a technique of supported typing uh,
Mm.
with people who don't speak, and just supporting them lightly at a keyboard, so they have it helps them to isolate and motor plan, and they've been able to demonstrate the truth of their intellect through typing their innermost thoughts, even though they may be making these vocalizations and they're rocking and hand flapping the whole time. So
Mm.
it really underscores my contention that they're in there, all cylinders are firing, and they're operating uh, intellectually at their chronological age and not below it.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, if we want to apply all this, modern science emphasizes on early intervention and evidence-based therapies for autism. From your
Mhm.
perspective, which approaches have the strongest evidence for proving the quality of life, and where does lived experience add value to those models?
Right. Well, the strongest evidence for me may not be scientific based,
Okay.
but more anecdotal or experiential. And I am a huge proponent of relationship based
Nice.
interventions and building a relationship with the individual, founded on that platform of presuming intellect, finding mode or modalities of communication that will work for them so that they can express themselves and demonstrate that intellect, identifying their most passionate of interests or areas of special interest, because
Mhm.
that's going to lead to what connects them socially to other people who share those interests. That can lead to educational or vocational opportunities for them, and to also be very keenly attuned to their sensory sensitivities, so that we're not setting them up for failure by putting them or expecting them to function in environments that are sensory assaultive.
Yes. Interesting, very interesting. Although I have done many interviews about autism, but seeing it from your perspective is really different and interesting. So thanks for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Um,
That's why I do what I do.
Lovely. A
Thank you.
common misunderstanding, William, is that autism is only a deficit. What does current research say about the strengths, and how have you seen those strengths really manifest in real life?
Well, again, I don't know that there's research to support all of this, but it's
Mm.
more experiential and anecdotal, Christine. And
Yes.
uh, what I can tell you is that people with autism, particularly those who appear to be severely affected,
Mm.
are the most spiritually gifted and psychic people I have ever known,
Mm.
right? When you live in silence and you're an intelligent being, it becomes akin to a perpetual meditation.
Mm.
And if you think about who else lives their lives like that in expansive periods of solace and quiet, the nun, the monk, the yogi, the guru, the priest, the rabbi, right? And
Yeah.
those are folks that at some point in their lives made a conscious and deliberate decision to enter into those states of solitude. The person with autism was born into it naturally. They're already doing it.
Wow.
The people of religious standing do it in order to connect and become one with that source. The person with autism is already doing it naturally and organically. They were already born into it. And
Right.
so I always tell parents and caregivers, no pity, no pity. We're not going to baby people. We're not going to treat them with kid gloves. They know what they signed up for. They came into this world knowing what they signed up for, and they're not going it alone because they have that spiritual connection. They have that backup already. Even when times are really, really challenging and tough for them, they have that encouragement and that backing.
That's amazing. I think you've already touched the base of the book that I'm trying to go into at the moment, which is the Autism and the God Connection. It really explores spirituality and giftedness in autism, and it
Yes.
doesn't venture into the scientific claims. So can you connect some of those scientific ideas with your own observation that you put into the book?
Right. Autism and the God Connection is actually the first in a trilogy of books that were
Yeah.
issued. I think they were issued 2 years apart. So when I wrote Autism and the God Connection 20 years ago,
Wow.
I already had all of the information that would eventually go into all 3 books. But I thought, well, maybe I should sort of parcel this out piecemeal so that I don't undermine my own credibility. Because
enough.
at that time, it was really rather a risky subject to address. And to my knowledge,
Indeed.
it's the first book to do so. So in Autism and the God Connection, in the beginning of the book, I do review some of the scientific correlations between people of brain chemistry, of people who spend time in absorbing states of meditation, and
Wow.
how that elevates the neurotransmitters in the brain, the dopamine and serotonin, and how people with autism tend to have already elevated neurotransmitters. And that sort of thing is all in that book,
In the book, yeah.
to sort of crosswalk a little bit there. But, you know, at the time I wrote that, again, this was new territory. This was uncharted territory. So there really wasn't much of anything in terms of scientific evidence specific to autism, but I had to sort of crosswalk it from other studies
Yes.
that were done on spirituality and what happens when you descend deeper into states of meditation.
That's lovely. Amazing. Now, neurodiversity advocates would argue that society should adjust expectations to include a wider range of cognitive styles. From an evidence based perspective, what does the science say about inclusion and adaptation, like in schools, at
Well,
workplace, or in communities?
I'm not going to be able to answer that because the science piece of it is totally not what I
No.
do, because it's
But how do
what
you
I do.
argue the neurodiversity advocates from your point
Yeah.
of view?
Well, I don't know what science says, but I think just from a humanistic perspective, it just is the compassionate thing to do.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about there's something, Christine, called universal design, which means what works for one group of people could actually be expanded to include everyone. So, for example, there was an era in time when all T-shirts and underwear had cloth tags sewn into them, right? And I remember as a child feeling that on the back of my neck like a razor blade nicking me all day long,
Yeah.
right? But now there are no tags like that anymore because the information about the underwear is just printed right on the cloth.
Yes.
So that's a universal design. That benefits someone like myself who has that sensory aversion to
Right.
that discomfort, but then it also is pleasant for everybody else too, you
Yeah.
know? And so when I talk about making compassionate accommodations for people with autism, it's not rocket science. It's very, very simple things that may also benefit other people as well.
Nice. Nice. Science emphasizes evidence and replicability, but autism is deeply individual. So, how
Correct.
do researchers and clinicians balance the need for data with honoring each person's unique experience?
Right. So there's lots of different ways then that you can gather data depending upon charting someone's progress. So around communication, around educational opportunities, vocational opportunities, and just again marking progress. And also, one of the things that I think we need to do better at doing is consulting with the individual themselves around
Mm.
what they want. But when we don't presume intellect, people tend not to do that. And so
Yeah.
they're gathering data around mundane things like personal hygiene, like daily living skills. Can this person use a spoon to feed themselves? I mean, things that don't presume the depth of someone's intellect.
Fair enough.
And that's the challenge that I face in my work. I tell people 90% of what I do
Mm.
as a consultant, 90% of what I do has absolutely nothing to do with the individual on the autism spectrum.
Mm.
It
So,
has
really,
everything to do with my desire to serve as an agent of change, to affect a transformation, a shift in perception and thinking in and among everyone around that person, Christine, because
mm,
that's where the real change is going to occur.
mm,
When people begin to demonstrate a renewed respect and a desire to develop meaningful relationships, presuming that individual's intellect, then that person will start to meet them where they're raising the bar, right? So
mhm,
that's the work. And sometimes it doesn't work because people resist that process. They want to rely on what they've always known to do, right?
mhm.
It's a challenge to a paradigm shift that perhaps people are so rigid in their mindset,
Right.
and sometimes it doesn't work because it requires people to confront the three most powerful words any of us can say about ourselves. I was wrong.
Mm. It's funny that you say that, William, because there's a long history of misguided assumptions about autism, right?
Correct.
It's maybe from harmful cures, they have to be cured, or oversimplified stereotypes. Now, what ethical principles should guide the researchers and the clinicians in this area from your point of view?
Well, again, we're circling back around
Yes.
to the number one fundamental tenet is presume the intelligence of that individual.
Mm,
Standard IQ tests are not created to accommodate people on the autism spectrum because they require an immediacy of response. And we've already addressed the motor control blips, misfires, and disconnects that could absolutely create delays in those responses,
mm,
sometimes for you know tens of minutes. And so if someone's not responding immediately, either because they're deep in thought, they're giving it careful consideration, or they don't understand the question the way it's been phrased, then that we're doing them a disservice because we're
mm.
moving on to the next thing and we're marking that they scored, as underachieving,
Yes.
right? And then we need to also focus on the absolute extreme importance of communication modalities for that person to express the truth of their intellect internally.
Lovely. Now, all of these changes that have been taking over the decades in both medical and educational communities, you've been witnessing them over the 4 decades, and we've been talking about how to improve or what was maybe wrong in there. But
I'm
maybe
not
I can.
I'm not
Sorry,
seeing I'm not real I honestly am not seeing much of an improvement.
that
To
was
and
my
my
question. Is there any
my
improvement?
my great fear, Christine, is that the
Mm.
pendulum is going to swing backwards,
Uh-oh.
and that at least in the United States,
Right.
I'm very, very concerned that the concept of institutionalizing people for cost efficiency is going to have the potential to be revived.
Mm.
Yep, that's my great fear.
So no improvement at all in 4 decades.
What I can tell you is I've been doing this going on 40 years. I've spoken all over the United States. I've interacted with people from all over the world, and my message has always been the same, and yet I keep saying the same things over and over and over again. Now,
Mm.
I don't mean to sound discouraging, because there are absolutely pockets of people that are points of light, and they are doing beautiful, gorgeous work, and they are transforming the lives of individuals and their families.
Yes,
But
but
there,
globally.
but as to your
Mm.
point, what you were saying, there's such a diversity of interpretation and approaches, because there is no one single known cause for autism, and there
Right.
is no one single methodology
Mm.
or educational approach. It's not
Mm.
one size fits all, and so
Mm.
that's why it just seems so scattered. But there's also a lot of turnover in the field with
Mm.
regards to educators and direct support staff as well. So I think that's why I end up making the same presentations for decades now.
Amazing. But William, the science of autism is continually advancing. Well, from 40 years to now, you said there was nothing really about autism, and now we're coming into acknowledging the science of autism, from genetics and neuroscience to social cognition, and maybe also adaptive technologies. My
Well,
question to
it's not Tylenol, Christine. Let's make
yes,
that clear, right?
it's not a cure. We shouldn't be curing. That's
That's been in the new, that's in the United States, that's been in the news, that it came out
yes,
from Robert Kennedy that Tylenol is
right.
causing autism, which is ridiculous, of course.
No, yes, we've
Completely
come a long way,
irresponsible.
I think. We've come a long
No, I,
way.
I I agree with you. There is absolutely a genetic component to it, because
Yes.
I see it. I see it in families where more than one child is on the autism spectrum,
Mm.
and I meet a lot of parents that are on the autism spectrum but are not diagnosed.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's usually the father,
Yes.
usually the
We've
dad.
we've we've seen that a lot in Australia as
Oh,
well.
yes.
My question to you would be, which emerging areas of research do you find the most promising for improving those lives?
I
Maybe we
think
didn't get
probably
there yet, but
I
hopefully.
think that I think that probably the research around the genetic component
Yes.
and that connection is, in my opinion, most valuable.
Nice.
Yeah.
And in regards to digital tools and AI and personalized support systems that are growing so much in the healthcare system nowadays, how might technology improve the assessment, the learning, or even the quality of life of the autism?
I think the technology is very much improving the opportunities and the options that people with autism and their families have around communication.
Right.
I don't know how many folks you know, but I know people of a vast age range, and I have met really young children who don't talk, but they know how to get on YouTube.
Yeah, of course.
And no one shows them any of this. No one shows them how to do any of this. You hand them a tablet and
Mm.
they just somehow know what to do. and they're calling up the information. I know I'm working with a young fella now who was largely nonverbal when we started. He's talking more and more, but I think it's his passion and his desire to research African elephants and the
Nice.
various species of the elephants. And he's talking, he's calling it up, he's typing it in, he's
Wow.
pulling up the information. And it's been amazing to see his progress.
It's
Yeah,
great
so
to see
definitely
that.
the technology
Is
is what's going to be helping people.
amazing. Before we go into our little game towards the end of this show, if you
Yes.
could give one science-based recommendation to policymakers about how to best support neurodiverse populations in the next decade, what would it be?
Oh, I'm not a scientist. That's not what I
Not a
do, but
scientist, but from what you've observed, how the scientist-based people can benefit.
I would say, please, let's just focus on the intellect of the individual and finding ways to assess the truth of that intellect with newly developed tools, perhaps in concert with the advancements that are being made with technology. That's where I would like to see people putting time and effort into.
Amazing. I hope it's noted. Now it's time for our myth busting.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is give you little statements related to autism and tell me if it's true or false and maybe a little why. Are you ready?
Okay, I'll try.
Let's do this. My first statement is autism is a disease that needs to be cured.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's absolutely false. And do you know, I'm still hearing that from time to time. People refer to it as a disease, as if it's contagious or something that you can somehow acquire.
Right. And
So
that's why it's
absolutely
in my
false.
myth busting, so that you can bust it.
Thank you.
Okay, the second statement. Autistic strengths are just traits. They're not useful in the real world.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's false also, of course. So the challenge then for us becomes, and again, there are pockets of excellence here and there of people doing really beautiful work and supporting those individuals to manifest the truth of their intelligence and the gifts that they have to contribute to our society. But it boggles my mind that I still hear and see about people with autism that are being trained to mop floors and refill the salad bar and clean toilets.
I've seen that.
Bag screws, put things in packing, like menial activities or jobs that are intended to be very temporary for the average person
Right.
become lifelong aspirations, and it's just wrong. And it's dehumanizing, quite frankly.
My third statement would be neurodiversity means ignoring supports and therapies.
No, absolutely not. But let's remember that therapies are intended to be short-term. They are not intended to be lifelong in the way that I've seen with some people who are still, in their 40s and still getting speech therapy. Well, if it hasn't happened by now, it's probably not going to happen. And that's just the beauty of their neurology and how they're wired. So an excellent therapist will impart the very best of what they know to do to the family and caregivers so that those people can replicate those techniques naturally within the flow of typical daily routines. So the therapy becomes invisible. The person's schedule does not come to a screeching halt in order to set time aside to do all of this stuff, and then expect them to assimilate that into real life. It makes more sense to me to let's just do it within the flow of what the person already is doing. And then it becomes seamless and invisible.
Right. And I
So
think
absolutely.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was saying this brings me to my next statement.
Oh,
But
great.
if you have something to add to that statement, please feel free.
No, I didn't want people to think that I was dismissive of therapies and
Right.
other supports, but they have a place, but they're intended to be, not a long-term solution. It's
Right.
intended to be short term. To give somebody a jump start.
Awesome.
May I
The
just
next,
add something? May I just
go
add
ahead.
something to that, if you
Yeah,
don't mind, please?
of
I have
course.
had so many people with autism tell me that their body feels like cement to them.
Mm,
And so, from a spiritual perspective, if we're talking about people who are buzzing and vibrating at such a high rate of frequency than the average person, they're not accustomed to being human. And so, it can take them 2 or 3 times longer to meet developmental milestones because they're trying to acclimate and make peace with this physical form that is very foreign to them and feels extraordinarily heavy.
wow, that's interesting to hear. My next statement will be autism is primarily is a childhood condition and adults are most likely to grow out of it. We hear that a lot in Australia.
Yes. Well, I'm living proof that it's not a primarily childhood condition. And I also think there's a great danger in that because then the focus tends to be exclusively on meeting the needs of children
Right.
to the exclusion of people who have aged out of the education system and are now adults.
Hmm.
Autism does not equate with that old term mental retardation or intellectual disability. Again, completely different,
Right.
completely different issues. We're talking about people who are intellectually intact. Their competency is at chronological age, and so that's how we need to view them and approach it. But
Lovely.
I agree with you. I hear it a lot in the United States too, is the focus tends to be on very young children.
That's true. My last statement for you is that autistic people lack empathy.
Oh my goodness.
Mm.
False.
Very big.
If anything, uh, we become very easily overwhelmed
Right.
because we feel too much.
Mm.
There's a book that for which I wrote the foreword that is coming out this month called
Mm.
Healing Autistic Burnout.
Wow.
And it is about this very thing, about people with autism, they hemorrhage so much. I remember myself as a child, I would be worried about how would I ever know how to catch the school bus to get to the high school when it came time. And that was years in the future. So I had anxiety about that as a child, but that I
Mm.
was also worrying and agonizing and losing sleep over global events
Wow.
as a child.
Yeah.
So I get that people might think individuals on the autism spectrum lack empathy because we tend to have a flat affect. We tend not to show a lot of emotion.
Mm.
There's that issue of not being able to communicate what we're thinking and feeling. And so a response or a reaction to something that is terribly upsetting and disturbing might be self-injury.
Yeah.
Yeah. Might be not being able to sleep at night and pacing and being up and down. So if
Mm.
anything, we are more prone to being overwhelmed with emotion. So it's the exact opposite of the question.
Wow, that is awesome. William, I really want to thank you so much for sharing both your, however, scientific insights and the personal perspective on neurodiversity and autism. Your work really demonstrates that understanding autism really requires both rigorous research and deep empathy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You've been a lovely, lovely and gracious host. We should tell
Oh,
people that because of the time difference, we had a little bit of a difficulty
we did,
connecting.
but we made
But
it.
I'm so thrilled that we did, Christine.
Thank you, William.
And God bless you and keep doing what you're doing and help to create that ripple effect based on what we've discussed here this evening, please. I'm counting on
Amazing.
you.
And
I'm
you keep
counting on
doing what you're doing for another 100 decades, please, because your
Oh,
job is doing really amazing.
thank you. Thank you. It was a
No
delight.
worries
I
at all.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. Now, for our audience, whether you're a parent, an educator, a clinician, or simply a curious listener, please, understanding neurodiversity really enriches how we relate to each other and build inclusive communities. This was Scientifically Speaking with Christine on Oz Arab Media. Until next time.